There are 5 modern inventions that are killing us all slowly. And in this short video, I'm going to go over these 5 and tell you what you need to know and help you understand why you should avoid all 5 of these modern inventions to optimize your health. I'm Dr. Ken Berry, a family physician with over 20 years of clinical practice. And we're going to talk about the 5 things that you need to avoid in the modern diet. Now, the very first thing is highly processed grains. Now, wheat, rice, oats, corn, and other grains, you can't eat any of those raw, or you run the risk of having serious health problems. So the very act of processing grain, we've only been able to do for a few hundred years. And indeed, before 100 years ago, which if you look at the totality of human existence on this planet, that's a very modern invention. We've only been highly processing grains, grinding them up into a fine powder, separating the different constituent parts. We've only been doing that about 100 years. And a lot of people think, no, people have been eating bread for thousands of years. Yeah, about 8,000 years. But back then, it was a very coarse grind. They weren't separating the grains up into its different parts. You were at least getting the whole grain cooked very, very thoroughly, which is probably less bad, but still not good when compared to our modern highly processed grains. So number one, you got to stop eating all grains. Don't eat them raw, they'll make you sick. Don't eat them highly processed or they'll make you fat and pre-diabetic. Number 2 on this list is vegetable seed oils. So did you know that prior to about 1910, no human on the planet had ever eaten or used to cook with canola oil, soybean oil, peanut oil, safflower, sunflower, any vegetable oil. It just was not a thing. We needed modern technology in order to highly process these seeds to turn it into vegetable oil. So back then in 1909, 1910, no one ever thought, gosh, we should take this previous wagon axle lubricant, and before we put it in the human food supply at scale, we should probably do some long-term studies to see if it has any inflammatory effect, if it has any pre-diabetic effect. Nobody thought to do that. They had just found a new use for a previous waste product, and they put it in the human food supply without doing any studies. And also, those long-term studies have still not been done on humans to this very day. The number 3 modern invention is adding sugar to everything. And again, you know, we've been processing sugar for about 4,500 years, still quite modern, but only starting in the early 1970s did food manufacturers start to put sugar in everything, including baby food, lots of sugar. And there's actually a theory that this is the cause of the modern obesity epidemic, is that adding this sugar to baby food not only caused metabolic problems initially in those children, but also set them up for a lifetime of sugar addiction and metabolic disease, and perhaps even affected the epigenetic expression in their subsequent offspring, in their children. And so before 1970, marinara sauce didn't have sugar in it. Before 1970, all of the savory foods that we think of as savory today, they didn't have any added sugar, but now all of them have added sugar, and I highly recommend you avoid sugar in all its forms. Modern invention number 4 that's killing us slowly is fruit juice. Did you know that prior to about 1872, that no human on the planet had a daily glass of orange juice or grape juice or apple juice? It was not a thing. We had no refrigeration. We had no means to mass produce it, mass market it, mass ship it. Maybe you would have a glass of apple juice or orange juice or grape juice once a year. That was it. And now there are millions of people around the world who think that they must have that glass of fruit juice in the morning because it's super, super healthy for them. Again, there's been no long-term studies in humans looking at what are the implications, what are the ramifications. Let's look at how many cavities we form in our teeth in the group drinking fruit juice versus the group not drinking fruit juice. I think that would be an enlightening study. Let's look at metabolic health. Let's look at fatty liver. Let's look at childhood obesity. No one ever did those studies. They just started mass producing and mass marketing fruit juice after 1872. Modern invention number 5 that's killing us slowly is a vegan or a plant-based diet. Now, there have been small cultures in the past that were forced to eat a vegan diet. They had no choice. It was either that or starvation. And so they did so. There's been some philosophers and some religious leaders throughout the millennia who have recommended eating only plants, but it's never been a worldwide trend like it is now. It was in no way, even if you said, I'm just going to eat a vegan diet or just plants only, you would have gotten kicked out of the tribe or kicked out of the village. Like, people back then had enough common sense to know that you got to eat meat and eggs if you want to be healthy and strong and robust and be able to help your people as they fight against this hard life back in the old days. Percy Shelley, a poet, wrote a book back in 1813 promoting a vegan diet or a plant-based diet. And it started then to become popular. So before 1813, this was not on anybody's radar. No one ate a plant-based diet. No one considered it healthy or sane to eat a plant-based diet. But Percy Shelley was a big poet. People looked up to him and they're like, oh, I'm going to check into this. And so slowly over the decades since then, it's become more and more popular. And now that certain powers that be realize, hey, if we're going to kind of take over the world in a totalitarian fashion, we're not going to be able to feed everyone meat and eggs. They're going to have to eat plants because we can grow those cheaply. Even though they're nutrient void, they do keep you from starving to death. And so now we see this very popular plant-based movement that, again, has never been researched long-term in humans, with a control group eating meat and eggs versus a control group of people eating only plants. And then let's follow them for 20 or 30 years. Let's look at cavities in the teeth. Let's look at mental health. Let's look at obesity. Let's look at malnutrition. Those studies have never been conducted to this day. And so those are the 5 modern inventions that I would highly advise you to avoid if what you're looking for is optimal health, optimal strength, optimal mental function. Don't fall for these 5 modern fads. Eat an ancestrally appropriate diet, a proper human diet. This is Dr. Barry. I'll see you next time.